Alright, Diablo 4 players, let's talk about it. Season 7, is it worth playing? What's my thoughts and review as of day 1? So, I've already maxed out my character. I maxed out on PTR as well. I'm here to give you guys my thoughts and current state of Diablo. So, for starters, one of the coolest things with the new season is we have all these brand new witchcraft powers that we can actually put on our character. And some of these are really good in the early game, basically defining a build, which is really cool. I like the idea of kind of mixing certain sort of aspects that you wouldn't have. Like basically we have this little circle that does damage over time, and it was great for the earlier stages, absolutely just dominating content. But this is really cool. We get to select 5 witch powers, and later down the line we can kind of make our skills that are normal skills kind of count as some of the witchcraft powers. Some of them will have like a growth and decay or a psych tag, and think of this kind of like, you know, your frost skills, your werebear, your werewolf, your cutthroat, your marksman skills. So they each kind of have this tag, and you can kind of build into specific tags. So it's not just like, oh, a new skill, you equip it, it's a cast on, you know, free condition, right? But it's more so that like you can kind of build around it, and I think they did a pretty good job. So for starters, this is like what's giving us the brand new forms of content. There's also the Coven's favorite board. This is something that we've seen time and time again, but it does tie into the progression, and it's kind of the rewards of the season with the season journey. There's also a brand new flying pet that you guys can actually unlock. And then on top of that, there are these new root holds, which I'll show you guys gameplay of in a moment. But this is basically the new content here. You're going into areas, and we're selecting these modifiers that are basically like the Infernal Hordes inside of a Nightmare dungeon, where we're going to have like some downside, but we'll also get some upsides. So the coolest thing also that I want to go ahead and go over, which is kind of more in like the late stage of the game, like I'm para 100 plus right now, and yeah, getting some of these like sigils are incredibly difficult because it requires so much time to be put into the game to get the resources. So don't expect until you get to like World Tier 4 to equip some of these like brand new gems. But most of the gems, I'm gonna be straight up with you guys, it's just a numbers game. It's like you can deal this cool damage on this sort of a condition where it's like, okay, I get to deal more damage with certain skill types, but they have to be on hexed enemies. And then we can use the witchcraft powers to maybe affect an enemy, do a hex on the enemy or some sort of condition. So that's essentially what's here as far as the content goes. But I want to give you guys some number stats because I was asked time and time again while I was streaming, what do I think of the season? And is it worth playing, to kind of answer the question? And I'm going to go over this first. If you like Diablo 4 Season 2, I think that you will have some fun tinkering around with some of the new uniques too. Remember, every single class got a bunch of different uniques to kind of play around with. How good they are, I couldn't tell you if you could make a build around it. Honestly, with Diablo 4, it's kind of up in the air in terms of like, this is the best build in the entire game, because a lot of these things kind of take time to actually discover. As you know, if anyone has played Diablo, you know for a fact Diablo 4, some of these best builds are always based around a bug. And who knows, maybe we'll find some, but they've been trying to squash out the like bugs and unintended interactions, but who knows what will be the best build. But at the end of the day, I did technically have a lot of fun while leveling with the brand new powers. It was great. It's mainly on the end game where I feel like that it needs a lot more work. But if you didn't like Diablo 4 like before, like if you're like, yo, I really didn't like the past few seasons of Diablo, I want to say this isn't probably going to change your mind. There isn't anything super big and game breaking in this brand new season that is going to completely change your mind. The big pain point I want to say that currently exists in Diablo 4 right now is that people are simply tired of the pit only for the end game. I think we need some other forms of content, and every single class, pretty much every single build can do the new content, but the new content isn't going to be able to upgrade your glyphs. And I think that making people that have to level up these glyphs to 100 when we have 5 different glyphs to level up is kind of a long time to go ahead and actually acquire. It just simply takes a long time. So I want to say that that is one of the pain points, especially in the mythic farming. I'm sure a lot of you guys that have farmed the mythics maybe are kind of tired of it. There's no other good ways to kind of have like newer forms of endgame content. So if I was to give this season a score, I think on the lower end I could give it like a 4 at the lowest, but at the highest point I want to say like a 6 or 7 is where I would rate this season in terms of a numerical score. And it's not because the season like you know, powers are bad. It's mainly that if I'm giving this score, it's Diablo as a whole in terms of a game. And the reason why is I really think that we desperately need newer forms of endgame content. If I'm returning to this season, I want to see newer forms of endgame content to consume, because that's where I essentially stopped playing the game in terms of Diablo 4 in the previous season. It's just like, I did a pit 150, what else was there to do? Maybe that's all that they want us to do is once you complete a, you don't have to even do a pit 150. You could do a pit like 100 or a pit 1. The gameplay is exactly the same, and I think they need newer forms of endgame content, and the pinnacle bosses need to be like super strong, but they can't just simply drop the mythics because we've already experienced that. So I want to say that Diablo 4 desperately needs new forms of endgame content besides doing the pit, because it kind of gets to the point where, okay, I spent like the weekend or the week, depending on how fast you are, because I maxed out in the first day basically. But pretty much it's like, well, what do I do for the rest of the season? There's a long time, and if I'm only going to be doing the pit, I think it gets a little bit stale. While they did encourage us to do some other forms of content, like getting the abduct site from the nightmare dungeons or getting a bunch of the new rot for the upgrades of the powers, it kind of just feels like you are a hamster on a wheel. Yeah, I'll eventually get an upgrade, but there's not a big dopamine hit. So again, that's kind of like where I want to go and start off the video with. But I want to give also numerical scores to the other things in the game. So as far as it goes, I do think the powers were cool, and I like the ideas of the new powers. Like, they did a really good job on that. I want to give them an 8 out of 10. So that's a good job on the brand new powers. They were fun. They were engaging. They required me to maybe stay still or do a very specific thing or get close to the enemies in order for certain things to activate. And I think the new uniques were really cool. There's a shadow step build. There's ball lightning's making a return kind of in a different way where you get a super ball lightning. There's an earthquake, Hoda barbarian. There is a lot of different things that did get buffs. So maybe we can open up the doors for more ideas. Now, how good these are, I'll be honest, I don't know if these are going to be like super OP or anything in terms of like the late game, but I did feel like the newer uniques had some potential, at least, especially with like some of the new rogue stuff that you can mess around with, because the rogue stuff can tie into also your shadow clones. So big buffs over there. There's a lot of big buffs to a lot of fan favorites from like season 2, like I'm talking Shred, Ball Lightning. Again, Hoda was a really popular thing in season 2 as well. So a lot of things are kind of making a return in this season. So if you really like season 2, I think that you will like the season. As far as like the gems go, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. As far as like the gem upgrades go, a lot of these are just like a numbers thing. So like, for example, over here we have this thing where, again, it's giving you some sort of damage on a condition, right? And I would say those are a little bit less interesting. So if I was to give like the gems a score, so I'm giving it like a 2 out of 10. I really didn't care for it that much. It was like a damage on some sort of condition, right? Whereas like the powers and the new uniques, I think that's like an 8 out of 10 for Diablo 4. I think they are coming out with cooler ideas, but I want even crazier things with these uniques. I want like Path of Exile 1 level of uniques where like you can scale damage as far as light radius goes. You can do these really weird things that I want to see in Diablo. I want to see the really weird things kind of emerge out of this game in terms of like build creativity versus, oh, you pick your favorite core skill and you go. And they are kind of moving away from that, and I think that's good. But as far as the gems go, I mean, it's just a damage on condition. 2 out of 10 for that one. For the story, I want to give the writing for the season, like, I think that's a 7 out of 10. They did a pretty good job with the story. It ties into the main like core of the game as far as like the Tree of Whispers. I like it. It's cool. The Grim Favors kind of tie into like, how it works, and I think they did a great job on the story part of it. Honestly, it's all pretty much like 30 minutes of like content if you're to like basically cut that part up. I'm uploading the campaign right now. If you guys want to see all of the campaign, I'm gonna have it uploaded. But the story, as far as like the writing is good, but the story gameplay, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. It's literally just go do Grim Favors, go do the rot or the new root areas, which is something I'll show you guys in a second. It's literally a nightmare dungeon that you go into. So like, I'll show you guys what it does. So you go into the area, you pick some negative modifiers, and they will also give you some sort of like benefit, like extra like rewards, right? But it's at the end of the day, it is a nightmare dungeon in disguise. I'm kind of personally tired of nightmare dungeons and pits. I want new forms of content. So again, I'm gonna give this like the gameplay of the story part of the game. It's like non-existent. It's like the exact same thing. There's no big set pieces in it. There's like not like some crazy thing where, I don't know, you get to pick a side, and you get to decide if you want to save like the rot, or there is like one decision that you make, but it's not like a huge decision where you get to completely alter like the way that the game works, and then like some sort of like big key passive that your character now unlocks for a power. And I think that would have been really cool. As far as the headhunts go, and as far as like the root stuff goes, it's basically repetitive content. It's the same thing that we've seen. I'm gonna give this just like a 5 out of 10. While there are newer forms of like, okay, you can escort this animal. How fun is it to escort the animal when the animal goes in the opposite direction? I mean, I guess it's there for realism, but I want to say it's like, it's like an average. I'm going to 5 out of 10. Like, as far as like the roots go, it was cool that we had these modifiers, but I'll be honest, Diablo 4 is a pretty easy game. The more that I play this game, it reminds me more and more of Diablo 3, because it's just like you can start within the first like hour and you're going to have the ability to start blasting content, which, I mean, that's a cool power fantasy though, I'll be honest. And I think this game is definitely more designed for a casual entry action RPG versus made for hardcore action RPG players, which is kind of what PoE 2's direction is going in. And I think that these both can coexist. While I was playing this game, people were like, did you quit PoE? Why aren't you playing PoE anymore? I'll be playing Diablo 4, and I'll be playing PoE. And when Titan Quest comes out, I'll be on that. When Dragon King comes out, we'll be playing that. If Wolcen 2 launches, we'll be playing Wolcen 2. I just love action RPGs. And Diablo 4 is a pretty great entry action RPG, and that's kind of what this game is to me as right now. And I could hop on for a week and have a lot of fun, blast, and then, you know, I'll wait till the next season comes out. There's not enough content, I think, for like a hardcore action RPG player. Even if you look at games like Torchlight Infinite, which is like a mobile game, that game has so many cool in-depth things that you can tinker around with. And they are kind of adding a little bit more to it. So I'm excited to see what comes out maybe in the next season with where the game is kind of cooking up. But they're really trying to get some of the earlier players up to par. There was a recent thing that I dropped a video on. A lot of people were checking it out and commenting. It was like less than 5% of people have even completed the actual like campaign part of the game. And I think that that number is really a big number to Blizzard, and they're probably looking at that. We want to get more people in the end game, and they are constantly doing that with like the seasonal boosts and stuff. So I think they really want some of the like beginner players of action RPG players to use this as kind of a tool to maybe get them to play the next action RPG game, which at this point is pretty much just like you play Diablo, you have some fun with it, and then once you feel like, okay, well, I've done everything, I'm just gonna go play PoE 2 because there's like infinite amounts of content. And I want more sort of like infinite amounts of content with Diablo 4. But anyways, the new gameplay of the root holds, like I said, you're seeing it right now. It's literally a nightmare dungeon. You just kill stuff, you click on it, and then you go fight a boss. It's literally a nightmare dungeon in disguise. I feel like they really could have done much better on that. I kind of wrote down on my notes, I put like a 2 out of 10. It's just one tile set of a dungeon, and I feel like they could have had some variety on it. Maybe something else could have happened. It's just something I just didn't feel like it was engaging. The new bosses, the first time you fight the new boss, well, I started out the game on hard mode. It was like incredibly hard. I'm like, wow, dude, they took some notes from PoE 2, and they're like, dude, we want to make it hard. And I was like, okay, this is different. I can mess with it. But then later, you get to the point where you're like so strong, you guys will see the boss over here, that like I had to stop actually attacking the boss so I could actually see what the boss actually did, which is something that I want to go ahead and actually mention. But later down the line, the bosses, again, it's like a boss where like it's a little bit spongy, but you can, for the most part, you can melt it. It's not gonna be a big deal. It's like the tormented like pinnacle bosses where like eventually you get to the point where like your build is so strong you can melt the bosses, and they don't feel like a boss, something that like, wow, I can't wait to tell my friends I beat this boss. Whereas like if you're uploading some sort of content like PoE, like a one shot like the Arbiter or something like that, like it's kind of more of an achievement versus Diablo. You tell someone you one shot the boss. People that play the game probably like don't care, but if you're looking at the game viewpoint of like, again, from like a PoE standpoint, one-shotting Arbiter, that's pretty impressive. You're like, okay, what did you do for that, right? But I want to give the game a score in the end game, which is, I think, really low, but it really drives the point home that we need new forms of content here. I want to give the current state of the end game, not just like specifically for Season 7, but as a whole, I want to give it like a 2 out of 10. As a whole, including this season, because I am simply tired of doing 1,000 quadrillion pit runs to get 5 of these glyphs to level 100. I've done it before. It just feels like I'm a hamster churning on a wheel. Like, I know I'm gonna eventually get there, and I get there in a weekend and max out a character, but it just, you don't hit that dopamine like hit that you get when you do a PoE map, which is like you can potentially get something really good. Like, you don't realistically go into a pit thinking, man, I can't wait to get some new gear. It's like, oh, I got some elbows, oh, did I get greater affix? Oh, it rolled 10 life per 5 seconds. It's like, it's unrealistic to get really excited about a lot of the drops, and I think that is a big pain point as far as like the rewards go. Like, sure, you're giving us tons of legendaries, that's great, but like you get to the point where like I don't even want to pick up legendaries anymore unless it's a greater affix at this point. Well, this is like early gameplay here because I want to show you guys like the early progression. It's like so fast nowadays, but I didn't really like doing like, again, the pit runs. I feel like I've just done too many of those. And then as far as like doing like the bossing, I just didn't really like doing the mythic farming. That's a pain point and like further down the topic. But I feel like the end game right now, it feels really bad especially for the players that have been playing the game constantly. Because I put thousands of hours into Diablo, and at this point, as far as my enjoyment of the end game, I'm giving it like a 2 out of 10. This is the pain point. This is the area where we need some new forms of content. I'm talking PvP. I'm talking about proper leaderboards. I'm talking about new forms of content. Like, for example, the Citadels. Those were really cool. The Citadels were awesome the very first time, but after you do it, that's where I feel like Diablo really lacks the ability for the repetition of the game. I almost feel like having maps, or I actually really like the Greater Rift system in Diablo 3. I don't know why, it just feels so much like better than D4's system. It could be that like the maps and tile sets, but I really want new forms of endgame content to consume. That's the biggest point I really want to drive home in terms of like the game itself, is like I want newer forms of endgame content. But I think what it also comes down to is getting that big dopamine hit. Like if you're playing like, maybe they could have like really rare skins that you can unlock. They do technically have like the seasonal journey and progression where you can unlock like a flying pet, but like, you know, I'm not going to be too excited about just like a little pet skin, but I really want new forms of like crazy items that again kind of like completely change up some builds. But overall, to kind of wrap up my thoughts, is it fun? Is it worth playing? I think it's going to be awesome for like for some of like the hardcore blasters, maybe you'll get a weekend out of it. But for the people that maybe a little bit slower, you know, they actually, you know, take a shower, they have a job, they have to take bathroom breaks, they can't play, you know, 30 hours a day. I think you can have fun for about a week with like one character. You'll probably max it out. But for the hardcore action RPG fans, after a week or two, I feel like they're just going to be back on PoE. That's the reality of it. I mean, PoE 2, that is. You know, also, we have a bunch of other action RPGs coming out very soon. Titan Quest is right around the corner. I'm really looking forward to that game as well. But I'm really hoping that Blizzard can kind of look at this game and not focus too much on getting the people that don't even finish the campaign to let them like get to that point. I think they need to focus on the people that will come back every single season and drop a couple hundred hours and are buying the skins for the game. Those are the players that you may need to try to cater towards. I'm not even talking about like the top 1% of players that again play 30 hours a day. I think there's a lot of people that simply just want more content with Diablo 4. We want like actual challenging things. I want like really cool different ways to actually kind of play the game versus kind of picking a core skill and going. Like I said, they are kind of moving out of the direction, and I think that's a good thing, but I think we need more of that a little bit faster, and to get people really excited about new forms of content, because at the end of the day, to be real with you guys, this is a game where in Season 7, it's kind of a repeat of Season 1 with the little gems. There's like a condition thing, and then you also have like the seasonal power of like the vampiric season. Great. I think it's cool, but I need to take that power and invest it into something that is, you know, worth my time, it feels like, because again, I don't really feel like my time is valued when I'm needing to do thousands of pit runs. That's the way I currently feel about the current state of this game. But to answer the question, is it worth playing? I think it is a blast for like a weekend or a week for a lot of players, but we'll go back to other action RPGs very soon. I'll be dropping a lot of build guides. I'm still going to have fun, and I personally have fun as a content creator because I like making these wacky builds that, like, they may suck. They may not be top tier, but I know for a lot of people, they just want to see the top tier build, and I totally get it. We'll wait and see what ends up becoming the top tier build, but again, I wanted more stuff out of the root hold. Again, it feels literally identical to a Nightmare Dungeon, and that's where I want to say I want new forms of content in a new season. And they did a good, the power is there. Like, I'm glad we got the power, but I needed to be able to take that power and do some new epic boss. And like, there is a boss, and it's the first time we fight it is quite challenging. But after that, it's just like, whatever. I can actually look at my chat. Like when I'm playing PoE 2, I need to be focused in and locked in, because if there's an on-death explosion and I don't like roll out of it, well, it's pretty much GG's. So there are some pain points with that game too, but I want to know, what do you guys think about Season 7? Let me know. What would you score it out of a 10? Because I gave you guys a bunch of my scores. Curious to know how you guys feel about it, but I think it is definitely worth playing for most people. But if you didn't like Diablo 4 before, this isn't going to like drastically change your mind. But anyways, more stuff to come very soon. So if you're new here and you want to see more action RPG stuff, because like I said, there's a lot of really big action RPGs coming out very, very soon. In fact, Jotun Slayer, we're going to be dropping gameplay of that, which literally launched the same day as this. But I'll give you guys gameplay of that. I'm really excited about that. And of course, Titan Quest 2 is something I'm really looking forward to. Anyways, take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And check the pin if you guys want to see more Diablo content. And don't worry, guys, we're going to be continuously uploading Diablo 4 and PoE, and also Marvel Rivals. So don't worry, I didn't quit PoE 2 just because we were going to be uploading a lot of Diablo videos this week. Anyways, peace out.